White. They say he went on a rampage, and the stories of Joaquin's murderous doings got bloodier and bloodier with each telling. He and his gang hid out in the mountains south of Murphy's, striking into the surrounding area, and by 1852, they'd been accused of taking anywhere from none to 200 lives. A $3,000 price was set on the bandito's head, and Mexican War veteran Captain Harry Love led a band of California Rangers in pursuit of the reward. In July of 1853, Love captured a man he said was Joaquin Murrieta. If it was Joaquin, the justice he got was as bitter as his life. Love killed him, cut off his head, and put the trophy in a pickle jar.
Joaquin's head was displayed in a museum in San Francisco for years, even though the bandit's sister claimed Love had executed the wrong man. Between the Sierra Nevadas and the Rockies, just over the mountains from California, sits the arid sagebrush wilderness known as the Great Basin. It was here, in this desert wasteland, that miners blundered onto the most fabulous strike of silver and gold ever made, the legendary Comstock Lode. Over $400 million came out of the Comstock mines from 1859 to 1878, which in today's market would be valued at over $6 billion. This was the single biggest gold and silver strike in our country's history, enough money to change the entire nation's economy and to fuel the richest and wildest boom town in the West. And Virginia City, Nevada was precisely that kind of place. The town was built right on top of the silver veins that dove deep into the heart of Sun Mountain, about 20 miles southeast of Reno, Nevada. Almost overnight, Virginia City grew from a collection of tents and shanties to a sprawling, rambunctious town of 25,000 characters. And so wild, it had 6 churches and 100 saloons. One Virginia City saloon keeper distilled something he called tarantula juice. It was supposed to kill anything that bit you. It was so rich, it boasted fancy restaurants and drinking establishments, several Victorian mansions, and the famous Piper's Opera House, where the brightest stars on the American stage could be seen. Among them was Edwin Booth, a member of the nation's most famous stage family, and brother to the man who would slay President Lincoln 3 years hence. Like most of these wild boom towns, Virginia City had no history, and as such, people came from all over the country to lose their identities and start life anew. Julia Bulette was one such soul who recreated herself in the midst of Virginia City's boom, turning to the oldest profession, the only way for an unattached woman to make her way. She became the wealthiest madam in the territories and earned the miners' affection to such a degree that she was made an honorary member of the fire department. Oddly enough, most of the other popular women in town were bestowed with the same honor. Virginia City could also claim the best newspaper in the West, the Territorial Enterprise, where a tenderfoot reporter named Samuel Clemens began his career. Clemens would become one of America's greatest authors, writing under the pen name of Mark Twain. Clemens had come west with his brother in 1861, looking for a new life.
Virginia was a busy city of streets and houses above ground. Under it was another busy city, down in the bowels of the earth, where a great population of men thronged in and out among the intricate maze of tunnels and drifts, flitting hither and thither under a winking sparkle of lights, and over their heads towered a vast web of interlocking timbers that held the walls of the gutted Comstock apart. Imagine such a framework 2 miles long, 60 feet wide, and higher than any church spire in America.
While the silver miners were the best-paid miners in the world at $4 a day, their subterranean workplace was stiflingly hot and dangerous. You could boil an egg in the steamy thermal waters, a true living hell. In April 1869, the inevitable happened when the Yellow Jacket mine just outside
Where busted miners would pay their rent by turning over deed to their claims. Eiley won half of the Comstock load without ever getting dirt under her fingernails, serving as mother and maid to those grimy prospectors. There, she met the man of her dreams, a mule skinner named Sandy Bowers. After taking notice of his initials, she joined him at the altar just months before their claims hit pay dirt. Her vision was well along the way to coming true. Eiley had the palace of her dreams built on level land down by Washoe Lake. It was completed at a cost of $300,000, the biggest castle in all of Nevada. Money's no problem when you're literally digging it up out of the ground. As Sandy liked to say, they had powerful good luck and enough money to throw at the birds. Then Eiley and Sandy Bowers crossed the Atlantic on a buying spree. Their money made them the Wild West's version of royalty, and they cut a path through Europe with a $20,000 a day bankroll. They threw money at fancy furniture and had their bullion worked into silver treasures. Back home, the Bowers mine was going bust, and by the time they got back, Sandy was getting tired of high living. He started spending more time in the saloons than he did in Eiley's mansion. And one day, he signed over his claims to the bank and walked away. He died at the age of 35. Mine dust.
With Alaska or American Airlines, and on Qantas, those miles multiply very rapidly. Very rapidly.
California, the last and baddest of the old-time mining camps, and the most remarkably preserved ghost town of them all. During the town's heyday, despite its wicked reputation, Bodie's vast riches attracted a wide array of fortune seekers. More than $500 million worth of gold and silver in today's value were hauled out of its mines. The town boasted a population of over 10,000 people between its peak years of 1878 and 1882, making it the biggest place between Sacramento and Salt Lake City.
Goodbye, God. I'm going to Bodie, prayed one little girl when hearing her parents were taking her there. Lawlessness was the way of life along the main street, lined with 65 saloons and as many dance halls and bordellos. A preacher once cursed Bodie as a sea of sin, lashed by the tempests of lust and passion. Bodie had it all. Lawmen and outlaws, cowboys and Indians, gamblers and gunfighters, opium addicts and vigilantes. Nearly all the men were armed, and one San Francisco bartender claimed they drank whiskey brewed from old boots, scraps of iron, snow slides, and climate.
The baddest man spawned in Bodie was Washaw Pete, a man so ornery he became a gunslinging legend throughout the West.
I'm bad. I'm chief in this here camp, and I can lick the man that says I ain't. I got an arm like a quart stamp and crush when I go for a man. I was born in a powder house and raised in a gun factory. I'm bad from the bottom up and clear grit plumb through.
Men like Washaw Pete helped Bodie average nearly a murder a day. One reporter wrote in 1881,
6-shooters are of no account unless they are used, and coffins will warp and be unfit for occupancy if allowed to stand in an undertaker's room.
And with 100 drunks shooting off guns in the saloons, you were in more danger from stray bullets than from the one that was aimed right at you. Due to its rather seamy reputation, Bodie didn't attract many law-abiding citizens. The town, in fact, had 2 burying grounds, a tiny one for respectable folks and another for everybody else. Today, Bodie is carefully preserved as a California state park, visited by over 180,000 tourists each season. Like a frozen moment in time, over 150 of its structures remain eerily intact, left as they were when the boomtown went bust, as if awaiting the return of its glorious heyday, when gold was king and Bodie was as bad as it got.
I've looked for gold, but little I found. I'm sad and lonely here. I know I've been sold, for there's none in the ground. I'm sad and lonely here.
Cold as hell and 1,000 miles from anywhere, the Rocky Mountains reared straight up out of the plains, marking the last frontier with a mile-high wall. There was hardly a white man fool enough to bother with the Rockies until gold gave them a reason. When miners struck pay dirt half the way up the side of a mountain in Colorado, men swallowed their fear and took up the cry, "Pikes Peak or bust." And we damn near did bust. Snowed under by winters that started in September and melted away in a flood every May. The miners hunkered down, staking claims and throwing up mining towns as if by magic. Epidemics raged through the camps: cholera, consumption, whooping cough, and smallpox were the names we gave to death. They claimed entire families and towns and hit children the hardest. Half our kids were taken before their 3rd birthday.
High in the heart of the Rockies, some 140 miles southwest of Denver, is the remains of Buckskin Joe, one of Colorado's first mining camps. Today, there's barely a trace of the old town. All the old structures have been reduced to rubble by the harsh Rocky Mountain winters. Where once gold was king, weeds now claim dominion. Among the ruins is the broken foundation of a dance hall, where a lady known as Silverheels once sang. Here, one of the richest nuggets of gold rush folklore plays on, the story of one woman's heroic deeds during the fatal smallpox epidemic of 1861.
Silverheels came into camp in the spring, wearing a black veil and a dress. People fancied that she was a Southern belle, mourning her Confederate lover. She had a certain dignity and came to the dance hall only because she was down on her luck. She took a job playing piano and broke the miners' hearts with ballads from the South, sung in a clear, sweet voice. It's said she never raised her veil and wouldn't talk about her past or even tell her name. So they came to call her Silverheels after the shoes she wore when she sang. Smallpox swept into Buckskin Joe in the winter. As the cemetery filled, the women and children were sent down the gulch to Alma. But Silverheels refused to leave. She nursed the miners through the epidemic, caring for the widows and the orphans left behind. Finally, the fever overtook her as well. She fought the fever alone for nearly 2 weeks. When she was able, she gathered her strength and rose from bed.